Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to break down how Spurs knocked Manchester City out of the Champions League. We're going to see how both sides look to approach the game, why there were so many goals in that opening half, and talk about the key talking points and key strengths in that first half before we move to the second half and see what tactical changes Pochettino made to stop Manchester City from running away with the game. But before we get into today's video, don't forget to give our video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it. The bell below does give you daily notifications regarding our organic, unfiltered soccer/footy analysis, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. But first, let's get to the starting lineups. We look at Manchester City, more of a 4-3-3, Sterling and Bernardo with Aguero up front. In midfield, they went with their tried and tested David Silva and Kevin De Bruyne ahead of Gundogan. Then we move to Spurs, more of a 4-4-2 diamond initially with Son and Lucas Moura ahead of Eriksen, out in the shuttling roles, Dele Alli and Sissoko ahead of Victor Wanyama. So now let's get to the first half, see how both sides look to approach the game and why there were so many goals in the first half. So when we look at Manchester City against Spurs, we look at the two lineups. We see Spurs playing with that 4-4-2 diamond. Obviously, one of the key things that they probably want to do here is to really condense the midfield, keep it really tight, try to dominate that zone, and perhaps get the running of Son and the running of Lucas Moura to cause Laporte and company some problems. However, the one problem with the diamond is that sometimes you become a bit too narrow, and the way that City were playing was that they were trying to stretch the pitch. Bernardo was holding the width, you had Raheem Sterling holding the width, Mendy and Walker were playing a bit narrow, and then what happens there is that you have De Bruyne and you have Silva being able to occupy space in the half spaces, because when they didn't have the ball, we saw them drop off into more of a 4-4-2. And well, initially we saw Spurs try to press from the front. We saw Lucas Moura and Son step to the center backs. We saw Eriksen step to Gundogan, and that's fine. But without the ball, what you end up seeing happen here is that you have the wider players, obviously, with their jobs to do in the shuttler. Sissoko supposed to step out to Mendy. You have Dele Alli who's supposed to step out to Kyle Walker there as well. But when you have these two players in these zones, we could see what they're trying to do here. They're trying to occupy the space of the fullbacks, because then that allows space for Sterling and Bernardo to get onto the ball. So that's what they were trying to do. And when the ball gets shifted out into those zones, they look to run into space in behind the fullbacks. And that was pivotal in a lot of Manchester City's key chances throughout that opening half. And that's where Spurs did struggle, because when you look at the flip side, City dropped off into two banks of four without the ball. And it was a bit nervy for them, because when you look at it, you have Silva and you have Aguero stepping forward, and then in the wider areas, obviously you have Bernardo and you have Sterling stepping in and trying to play a bit more narrow. But the big problem that they had with that system without the ball was the fact that it allowed Eriksen and allowed Ali to get the ball in pockets of space, and they were able to really harm them. So when you look at those aspects, you have to break down how Manchester City were able to score their goals, how Spurs were able to score their goals, because those were the key talking points there. Like I said, runners in behind the fullbacks, the fact that Spurs' system was very narrow and they had Sterling and Bernardo stretching the width, and the fact that you look at Spurs, they could find space in between the City midfield. So when we look at the goals that Manchester City scored, we look at them first. A lot of it stemmed through that path, and it did see Kevin De Bruyne drop into space, into that right half space, into the right channel where he could pick up the ball, deliver dangerous crosses, or just find space there to get on the ball and look to pick his proper pass in between the lines. Because when we look at the opening goal, the ball is shifted out to him, and that means that Ali steps to him. And when Ali steps to him, he plays the ball beyond Ali for Sergio Aguero, dropping off ahead of Wanyama. And he already makes the run beyond Dele Alli to get it back, and he skips past Wanyama and Eriksen, and he's able to slide the ball between Sissoko and Trippier for Raheem Sterling. Sterling now is able to run at Trippier, but one of the key things here is that Sissoko's tracking, but David Silva makes a darting run into half space to drag him out of position, and that creates space for Raheem Sterling to curl his effort past the keeper. You have De Bruyne moving to the right, you have David Silva making that darting run in the left half space. That's how they create space there for their first goal. The second goal, we see more of this from City in a different aspect. You have Laporte step forward, and Laporte struggled throughout, and we'll get to him in a bit, not connecting his crossfield passes, making defensive mistakes, slides the ball out to Benjamin Mendy. That forces Sissoko to step to him. So now Sissoko has to step to him, and what happens there is that he plays the ball between Sissoko and Wanyama for David Silva again. David Silva now locates a pass into Sergio Aguero, who takes his first touch across Alderweireld, and this is key here because with De Bruyne playing in that half space, you have Vertonghen, you have Rose tucking in, you have Kevin De Bruyne. Now what we see is De Bruyne makes a darting run into that space to drag them out, and that allows Aguero to switch it out to Bernardo Silva in a wider position. Now Bernardo could go 1v1 with Rose, and he does get a bit fortunate to fire a shot off Rose and pass Lloris, but just like that, you're seeing the elements that are transpiring. Darting run, Silva finding that space, they were able to get another goal. We look to their final goal in that half. What we do see here is from a quick free kick, and one of the key aspects here that forced Spurs to eventually switch into their shape was that Kyle Walker was bombing forward down the right-hand side. In the first 20 minutes or so, he had already skipped past Wanyama, he skip past Dele Alli, and when we look at this, what happens here now is that they get the quick free kick and they instantly slide it out to Bernardo, who's able to run at Son, and he's able to run at Danny Rose there. So when he runs at them, what happens here is that De Bruyne makes the overlapping run, Bernardo's able to slide into him, and then you have the ball into the 6-yard box. Trippier doesn't track Sterling, breaking in, and just like that, City scored 3 goals in the opening 21 minutes. But you see the space there, De Bruyne making the overlapping run, him occupying space in those wider areas, delivering a quality cross, and that was how City went about their business, and they were able to score their goals. But when we get to Spurs, we see how they're able to get their chances. A lot of it stemmed through Son. We look to the opening opportunity, we see the ball played into Eriksen, who did drop off ahead of Laporte. He gets the ball played into him from Sissoko, and when Sissoko plays that ball into him, he drops it off to Lucas, and when Lucas gets the ball, he's able to turn on Kevin De Bruyne and drive at goal, and when he turns on De Bruyne, he's able to play the ball in between De Bruyne and in between Bernardo Silva for Dele Alli, and that forces company to step, and when Ali tries to play that reverse ball in behind the defense, it hits off Laporte, it falls to Son, and he fires a shot on goal that Ederson should do a better job in saving, but he doesn't, and that's how they're able to get their first goal. The second one is more of Laporte's fault here, because it's when City push a bit higher, they have Walker and Mendy pushing forward, and what happens is that he takes a heavy touch, and he's dispossessed by Lucas, and when he's dispossessed by Lucas, Lucas is able to drive forward. Instantly when Laporte loses the ball, you see Son sprinting in behind Walker now. So he sprints in behind Walker and he breaks forward, and Lucas ends up locating Son, and when he locates Son, what happens is that you have Dele Alli making a late run into the box to create space for Son to curl his effort past Ederson. We break down how that half went down, and you see in the opening 21 minutes, that's how they were able to score their goals. Unfortunately, what we ended up seeing was that Spurs ended up changing their system, moving more to a 4-2-3-1 with Ali Justin behind Lucas, and they had Son shift out to the left to ensure that Walker couldn't push forward. They had Eriksen cutting in from the right, and they relied on Sissoko and Wanyama to protect the midfield. However, the same issues were arising. You have Gundogan winning the ball in midfield from a loose Son pass, and he slides it out to Bernardo Silva, and instantly you see De Bruyne making the run across Danny Rose. He locates Sergio Aguero, taking his touch across Alderweireld, but Alderweireld did a good job to block it. But just like that, you see how they go about their business. As the half wore on, Sissoko eventually couldn't continue. Instead of bringing on Oliver Skip, they turned to Llorente because it seemed like Pochettino knew he had to score another goal. He puts Llorente up front with Lucas. Ali moves into midfield with Wanyama, and then you have Son and Eriksen in midfield. What happens here? We see a different element to how Spurs go, or how City go about their business. Ball shifted out to Benjamin Mendy. What we see is Raheem Sterling ahead of Trippier, and you have David Silva in between Wanyama and in between Eriksen. So when that ball is played into Mendy, Eriksen is responsible for shifting over. So once he tries to shift over, you eventually have the pass played into Raheem Sterling, and that's when we see the run of David Silva going in between Trippier and in between Alderweireld for Sterling to poke it into him. So this time you have Sterling holding the narrow position, and you have Silva making that darting run into the box. Trippier tracked it well, but it just goes to show how City were going about their business. And the final opportunity that we see in that half, it's a switch after the ball is played into Llorente. Eriksen switches it out to Son, who goes 1v1 with Walker and cuts outside but drags a shot wide. You break down that first half, Pochettino had to make a few tactical changes to cope with Kyle Walker and then eventually deal with the loss of Sissoko. But City were getting their chances in with the movement of David Silva and De Bruyne pushing into that space and moving outside of that narrow midfield, and they were pulling Spurs out of position. But City's defensive issues and their defensive mistakes stem from themselves, and Son did exploit them superbly. So now let's get to the second half, see what changes both managers made and how Spurs were able to kill the game off. So when we get to the second half, we see Spurs stick to their same system, 4-4-2. We did see some changes from City. With this 4-4-2 now, if Llorente and Lucas Moura did try to press from the front, Gundogan was always free to drop off into that space to pick up the ball and play positive passes. We saw De Bruyne on a few occasions drop deeper to pick up the ball in those deeper positions as well, and that would sometimes drag out Ali, but City were able to comfortably push forward. However, Aguero struggled throughout an open play, trying to do a bit too much by himself, lacking the final pass to link play with his teammates, and this was solely down the right-hand side for Manchester City. Space behind Rose. We saw Bernardo on two occasions. The first time he was able to poke up by Rose to give it to Kevin De Bruyne. De Bruyne plays the ball in behind Vertonghen for Aguero, and Alderweireld does track it. That eventually does lead to a cross that is cleared by Eriksen and falls to Kevin De Bruyne. Kevin De Bruyne now squares it to Gundogan, and when he squares it to Gundogan, he's able to slide the ball to Silva, who breaks into that space in left half space, and he pulls it back for Raheem Sterling, who fires a tame effort on goal that Lloris does save, and that was a key opportunity. Shortly after that, Son is dispossessed a bit higher by Walker, and he pokes the ball behind Rose for, again, Bernardo, who drives centrally and is fouled before sliding it to Raheem Sterling. And Sterling ends up picking out a ball to Aguero, who does peel off in behind Son, who is tracking, and he knocks it down to Kevin De Bruyne, who again has the time to fire an effort pass at Lloris, who does push it away. But in two instances, you see Kevin De Bruyne's impact, you see Bernardo getting down the right-hand side. That is what Manchester City were doing. But there was a phase within a 1 minute mark between the 57th and the 58th where we did see Gundogan eventually get bypassed due to a sloppy Walker pass, and Heung-min's Son almost got played in free in behind company. But shortly after that, we saw Llorente get in between the two center backs to receive a Dele Alli cross from the left, and he nodded an effort on goal that he possibly should have scored. But that's what Spurs lacked. No real counterattacking threat. City were constantly winning the ball in their midfield and recycling play and pushing forward, and eventually they got another goal. And what we ended up seeing there was, again, Gundogan being able to find Kevin De Bruyne in between Lucas, in between Dele Alli, picks up the ball in between those pockets. He's able to run at Wanyama and then poke the ball in between Rose and in between Vertonghen for Aguero at a tight angle, and he fires a shot past Lloris. But that's how they were going about things. Like I said, Kevin De Bruyne on two separate occasions, one time getting the ball in the pocket of space and drifting past Vertonghen before clipping a ball into the box that Trippier cleared from the 6-yard area, and then another opportunity where we did see a ball clipped by Bernardo over Rose for Kevin De Bruyne, who nodded it into the path of Aguero, but Vertonghen made a great last-ditch tackle. But that was how they were going about things. They eventually took off Silva, brought on Fernandinho, and pushed Gundogan a bit higher, but that eventually saw Pochettino make another change. He moved back to the 4-2-3-1. They had Eriksen sitting on Fernandinho, Llorente high, and they had Ali and they had Wanyama sitting off a bit deeper. So that's how they combated that. And eventually they were able to create one opportunity that led to the eventual key goal. And again, this stems from Son, but it goes to show a similar template that Manchester City were doing the Spurs. Ball switched out to the wide area, and Mendy is sucked out here. What we see is Heung-min Son from a central position making the run in between the center backs and in behind Mendy to get the ball in right half space, and Ederson's off his line quickly, makes the key save. He's unable to hold out and swing free corner kick, and the next corner kick we end up seeing Llorente get in between the two center backs running off Mendy to nod his effort past the keeper. Eventually we saw Davinson Sanchez and Davies come on. Spurs moved to a 5-4-1. Pep moved to Leroy Sané. But barring those opening minutes, the final 20 minutes of the second half saw City frustrated, couldn't create chance. We did see the VAR controversy, but Kevin De Bruyne was pivotal during those opening 25 minutes. But in the final 20, they ran out of gas. And Spurs getting that late away goal are off to the semifinals. But let me know what you guys think. Does this count as a failure for Pep? Did he get his tactics wrong? And can Spurs win the Champions League? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.